I checking it for? My delivery for my oven? No, I didn't get it yet. Smarty pants? I did not. Maybe we don't get good enough reception in here.
Could be, I don't know. Yeah, sure. I had to get a workout in.
Too much flying on the way home?
Yeah, exactly. Long flight, long flight.
How long is that flight?
3.5, and then 9, so what, 13 hours. Oh, wait, no, to Moscow was 15. New York, 6-hour layover, and then, yeah, it sucked. Going there sucked.
Can we do the executive session first? Do we need her for the executive session? I'm waiting for my thing to warm up. This is a City Council special session on Monday, June 17th, and the time is 7:15. I'd like to have, this is for the purpose of a city manager selection discussion, and let's begin with a call to order by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please take roll?
Member Sierra,
Present.
Member Barentine,
Present?
Member Cuesta,
Present.
Member Martinez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell,
Present.
Member Wink,
Present.
Mayor Olson.
Present.
All are present.
Thank you. Council, I was getting text messages just now from Heidi Voorhees, who was planning on being here for our discussion, and she was an hour late on her flight, but it looked like about 30 minutes ago, she said she was in a cab, and probably she'll be here in the next 10 to 15 minutes, but she did encourage us to go ahead and begin our conversation. So the first item is to actually discuss and make a selection, and we can also vote on who our top choice is for for a city manager. What I would like to do is first by just reminding us all, and I'm sure this goes without being said, but just for the public, that we have three very professional candidates who came forward to us, were willing to put their names out there and be publicly welcomed and scrutinized all at the same time, came here and publicly let us get to know them better. And we know that we're going to be picking one of them tonight, but and two will remain in their positions. We want to do everything we can to support the work and the call that they have to the work in public sector such as this, and honor their professional lives by being careful about what we say and making sure that we're affirming what we know is their best assets. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do, if this makes sense to everyone, would be to actually take our candidates one by one, maybe by alphabetical order like they were in our packet, and talk about what the best assets are for each one. And then once we've done that, then talk about whether we have a final, each of us has one that we think is the best assets for the city that we're in right now and our top point in time, and see if we can make a choice that way. Does that seem agreeable to everyone? So we'd each be giving sort of our pros on each person, and then who we think out of all of those is the best match, and then make a decision by vote. If you're okay with that, we'll go that way. And I also want to make it really fair to all of us, and who starts first, who starts second. So if we don't mind, I think I might start down here with Mr. Andrews, I guess, and come this way, and then with the next candidate, maybe start down there with Mr. Cuesta, and then maybe for the third candidate, maybe go this way. So I don't want anyone, if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, but I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I had to speak first, or I got to speak last, or didn't, or whatever. So would you mind doing
No, not
that?
at all. So you would
Kicking us
like
off?
me, just the best traits for?
Yes, Mr. Scott Andrews.
Mr. Scott Andrews. So, if we're speaking just for Mr. Scott Andrews, I just thought that he was a very communicative approach. He was very approachable during our meetings as well as during the meet and greet. I also felt that he was very analytical and data-driven. It came through with a lot of the answers that he brought up, and I guess the third positive trait there that I saw was that he's very innovative with his ideas. And so it also came through with some of the answers that he brought up of what he's doing within Smyrna. So I definitely saw a lot of positive with Scott.
Great. Councilmember Martinez.
I would echo those sentiments and also add that he did a lot of research prior to coming here. He asked really specific questions, really thoughtful, specific questions, emphasized the importance of analysis and looking at data and metrics, which I think is very important here. I also liked his background on the particular project that he worked on for turning the city center into an incubator space in his former city. I think that's really quite relevant to what we could be looking at here with our development of this area, and was responsible for many departments and had experience with comp plans. So I think those were all positive on his side.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I agree. The one thing that stood out about Mr. Andrews is I believe he had a lot of energy, along with the things that have already been shared about him. I liked the fact that he talked about consistency and openness and communication. That's all I have right now.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Wink?
Thank you. I appreciated the great deal of research that Mr. Andrews conducted. I believe he even came to town earlier for his first meeting with us. So the tremendous amount of different types of research he engaged in, and how informed he was about Englewood and our history and our present. And I don't mean just the geography of the city is quite extensive. He believes in the unified vision and support from council, as well as defining those qualities within the staff, and I think that's a big positive. And he was very energetic and approachable and personable in all of the encounters. All three, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Berentine?
I'll just echo some of the things people have already said. He did go into the comp plan. He did do a lot of research. He not only on us as a city, but on us as a community. He was very approachable, and he certainly did have a lot of energy. So I just echo some of the sentiments that have been said already.
Thank you. Councilmember Cuesta?
Yeah, I guess the pitfall of going last is you're just going to repeat what everybody in front of you said. But I will go through
Okay,
that
go ahead.
motion nonetheless.
Embellish.
Just from the start, he did have that young person energy and put that in a bottle. That is good stuff. I really, really liked it. It seemed he got here very early. He went to the parks, he went to the grocery store, he went down to the Platte, and people that kind of immerse themselves as much as they can in the city. That means a lot to me, and I think that that's valuable. I like that he said he wants to raise a family here. He wants to be here, and so I want somebody who doesn't just want a job here, but they want to live here and they want to be part of the city. That goes a long way. And I certainly don't think that was unique to him, but he really stressed it. I like the notion of him having a Pirates t-shirt, nice touch. So there were a lot of little things there. He's very well educated. He seems to have done very well in all his previous jobs also. He's moved through the ranks quickly. So he's one of those guys where whether he ends up with Inglewood or not, he just strikes me as he'll be successful. He's going to do well. And I'm happy that we had him as a candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll add just a few more. I think you've hit almost all of mine. I did have 2 cities of experience as a director or assistant manager role, 2 years as an assistant and then 3 years as an economic director. And he has done quite a bit of development and redevelopment and growth work in the Smyrna area. So I think those are maybe 2 extra things. Great. How about the next person, which in alphabetical order is Mr. Lewis, Mr. James, Sean Lewis. Mr. Cuesta, do you want to start this one out?
Pardon me, grabbing that.
That's fine.
You bet. Boy, in my perspective, he had an awful lot going for him. Again, that's not unique to him, but his work history up to this point I found very impressive in that not so much what he's done, but some of the situations and encounters he had in city government that were contested. And it seemed like he had been through battles and emerged on the other side. And as I'm sure we all know that, city government, it isn't always beanbag, sometimes that, people are passionate about issues, and they should be. And so I really appreciated it. It sounded like some of the experience he had in Texas really, really prepared him well for, I think, just situations where you have conflicts and sometimes very, very different perspectives in how do you get through that. So I do like somebody that has that kind of experience, not just where everything has gone well, but those times when things haven't gone so well. And how do you come out of those? I thought his just general demeanor and personality was very positive, cooperative. He seemed to really look for unity, getting groups together, and finding those solutions out of the groups. I did like that his father was in law enforcement as well. I think there's just something to be said about that, too, that it kind of ingrains in you just a deep respect for law and order and our law enforcement, first responders. I could talk about him a lot. I was really impressed by Sean. Many of the tangibles I just mentioned, but really intangible. I liked his personality. I liked his approach, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Berentine.
I'd echo some of what Councilmember Cuesta said, along with the development experience and the urban renewal. The conflict and the controversy comes out of that when you're growing pretty big. I thought he was extremely personable, and I was very impressed that I believe his city manager brought him up from Texas. Mm-hmm. So in working with him, felt a connection enough and that he would be a good fit here, that the experience he had down there, that he was willing to bring him up, just speaks very highly for him, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Wink.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis And forgive me, I am reading my notes from my iPhone. I brought the wrong laptop today, so that's what I'm doing. I took notes. So Mr. Lewis understands from experience the details in history that feed the challenges facing Englewood today. Equally, through relevant experience, he made very clear that he knows how to fill the gaps, the existing gaps, and aid our city in progressing through those challenges. Secondly, theories and practices that go into municipal government leadership are second nature to Mr. Lewis. I think he needs only apply what he deems appropriate to our context, which he says he'll do through an appropriate series of initial steps in the role of city manager here, should he get it. Targeted industry analysis of the data that's already available is at the forefront of his strategy toward economic development, very strong detail. His details of his approach to working with our staff, given our city's our city's own contexts, seems the most clear and the most strategically and tactically relevant. As an aside, I also appreciated his desire to have, to be provided forgive my term, but a Facebook of sorts, some organizational structure manual with faces and roles and names of our staff, I think once the appointment is made, so that day one he's walking through the door, a tremendous amount of that familiarity and learning has already been taken place. This is a practice I know to work wonders, and so that he's thinking on those levels for the reasons he is very strong. And I also feel his conflict resolution skills and inclusion of a municipal community and leadership more broadly seemed the most appropriate from what I was hearing in those terms for Englewood today and for where citizens of Englewood want to be tomorrow.
Thank you.
I have more if you'd like. 10 more minutes. No, kidding.
Why don't we see if no one else mentions anything that might be unique? Mayor Pro Tem.
He was a great candidate. The things in addition to the things that have already been mentioned that I like about him is his long-term commitment. And when he was in Texas, he was so well-liked by his city manager that he did bring him up here. And so they've been together for quite a long time. And so I believe that that is an advantage. I think he worked well with us in our engagement with him during the interviews. The one answer that, let me make sure this is the right one, that his response to question number 21 in our second interview, what would he need from us to be a successful city manager in Englewood? And we talked about, he said, to provide a clear and concise vision for this city. And then he engaged with us about what that looks like. And I was very impressed by that. The huge improvement in his interview between interview 1 and interview 2, I was a little bit concerned after interview 1 because of how long it went, but he was able to have concise answers in the second interview, so I like that. And I also believe he is a strong leader.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez.
Great. I agree he was a great candidate and had a lot of relevant experience. I will only add on things that I haven't heard before. He had the relevant experience, which I think really relates to us, is stormwater experience, and he went through a stormwater fee study process, which I think is very relevant to us. Code enforcement experience, he went through a process of a name change in one of his cities. to code compliance, so he has a lot of familiarity with code enforcement. He mentioned emergency management experience, homelessness experience, talked about housing first and creating housing ordinances, experience with RTD, regional participation and cooperation, RTD being one of those, Dr. Cog experience. I also like that he mentioned that he would keep a running list of topics that could bubble up to keep council in the loop, but just over time, keep his ear on things, and so we weren't surprised about things. I did like that one of his strengths finders was woo. I think it's a great strength. Also, him and I share that strength. So I really liked that. He talked about the importance of an integrated culture. So when you make change, it makes you think of how it's going to impact others before making that change. I really like that. I really like that a lot. He mentioned the importance of citizen engagement and mentioned an award-winning community engagement that they have in one of his current cities. Talked about the budget process and how that starts with the community vision. Again, he also mentioned the importance of using metrics to track our progress. I think that's really, really important. He did also mention the importance of helping the staff not to lose sight of the big picture, which I think speaks to leadership quality and leadership skills. He did also, when asked about inclusion in the organization, he gave really great examples, and he talked about working with the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, joining the Latino Chamber, and identifying cultural brokers within the organization. Also talked about if he were to come here, that change should be led by staff. He doesn't want to come in and shake up a whole bunch of things. Let's see, talked about code enforcement. He has experience with the priority-based budgeting, and also his conflict resolution skills. So,
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
You covered all the goods. So, no, so yeah, very impressed with Mr. Lewis as well. Just everything that everyone already touched on points. Just very process oriented. He's the organizational culture mindedness of him. There was just a lot to like about what he said. So I'm not gonna harp on too many of the same things that people just brought up.
All right, thank you. And the third candidate is Mr. Lichterman, and let's see. Oh, I was going to say some things about Mr. Lewis, too, I'm sorry, that weren't said. I did have a couple of extra things that weren't said. One of the things I liked was that he had 5 cities of upper director leadership management, which totaled, some 20 years, which gives him some different backgrounds to bring into ours. And I'm going to echo something a few of you said. I liked his ways of wanting to communicate with council in a regular way. Actually, several candidates did that, so I think whoever we get, we should do what they suggested about a weekly update. That would be incredibly helpful to all of us. And lots of experience with things that we are currently undergoing. Transportation issues, challenges in development. I loved his personal sort of sense when he went through a neighborhood and saw scrapes and felt badly, and I thought that's what we need, is somebody who gets the heart of what that's like for a neighborhood and also understands the challenges of housing and the housing stock. So I think he's got a dual kind of a head and a heart there that's really important. Understands growth in Colorado in particular, and neighborhood stabilization, and has done a lot with downtown economic development that's similar to what I think we might continue to want to have encouragement with our folks in the retail industry and especially along the Broadway corridor and some of the other economic areas for the drivers. I think the rest are the same as everybody else's. All right, now we go to the Mr. Lichterman. Councilmember Wink, do you want to start off and go that way, and then we'll come back and Mayor Pro Tem and go that way? Does that work? Okay.
Sure. Mr. Lichterman is very hands-on, very willing to roll up his sleeves and apply himself to citizen and community needs. And we have that very interesting example of the basketball court. Has a process template that he spoke about for working on economic development, has been at the table in negotiating impact of specific policy changes and in negotiating at the top level. In terms of affordable housing, technology, and parks. Very personable. Very personable. Sorry, that came out on the wrong pitch. That is it.
Are you done?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, sorry. Councilmember Berentine.
I think that of any of them, he had an awesome rapport with the community. I really respected that. I agree with Councilmember Wink that it is a very roll-up-your-sleeves kind of attitude that he had. I think he would come in and work very hard in this community. He has dealt with some extremely controversial issues in an area that's very dependent on each other, and regardless of what the makeup is of his particular community, they all have to work in combination with each other on what they're doing, and I think that he's faced some very serious issues. I also think that that would transfer over to the way that he communicates with council as well. I liked the kind of style that he would have liked to have done with that. I think he also did a lot of work in the community as well to kind of get a feel for the community, as the mayor put it, not just the head of it, but the heart of it as well. So it's just a really good candidate, I think, as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Cuesta.
You bet. I really liked Andrew a lot, and I thought, and I'll touch on the introduction to the citizens, and he did really well in there, and then I had a lot of folks speak to me afterwards regarding that. I do like that he's been with Deerfield since 2010. He started as an administrative intern, and now he's the assistant village manager. I imagine if he stayed there a few more years, he could probably end up manager himself. So I think he's one of those guys that he's proven himself repeatedly and managed to move up. He struck me as very analytical, very solution-oriented, which is certainly can't be overstated how valuable that is. I think that they had some unique challenges in Deerfield that didn't necessarily immediately translate, but he also mentioned #1 crimes were assault and car thefts, where I don't believe assaults are near the top for us, but car thefts certainly are. So I thought that there was also some things that were relatable to our city. I was impressed with Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I liked Mr. Lichterman as well. I feel that honesty is one of his great qualities, and I like his expectations of council and how he communicated that with us. And so I think he will be someone that could communicate well with council. I liked the statement that he said about the book that he suggested that read in leading developers, how to preserve the character of the community. And I also like the fact that he would treat all council members equally and fairly.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. He was also a great candidate. I liked that he mentioned sharpening his emotional intelligence, and I think he showed that several times. He has union negotiation experience. I also really liked what he said about having business retention meetings with businesses in the community, not just getting them here, but making sure once they're here, we do everything to keep up that relationship, to keep them happy and to keep them in our city. And I do really like the fact that he mentioned several times the importance of taking the schools into consideration. Similar budget process as ours, he did also mention the importance of needing to interact with citizens the way that they want to interact with the city. So that will be multiple channels and meeting the citizens where they are, whatever shape that takes. He did also mention his family history connection to Inglewood. And I like that he mentioned he would provide a weekly written update to council.
Councilmember Sierra.
Yeah, I was impressed with Mr. Lichterman as well. Just a great communicator. You saw it during the meet and greet, and also during our meetings. He was very on point with a lot of his answers. And we talked about how he likes to get his hands dirty. He talked about some of the other candidates did as well, but he was just talking about the fact that he would immerse himself in the community with all the different groups and commissions and even groups that don't really roll up through the government, through the city. So he's really comfortable in that aspect of it. The thing that really shined through with him was there was just a confidence and a maturity to him. And it showed with one of the answers that he gave us where he basically stated, I need council to do their homework. And so it's just a really big positive for something that we need in the city. And he talked about, I'm trying to think of I wrote it down here somewhere. Impact fees and some of the other things in terms of economic development. So he's got a lot of familiarity with that. And then just, some of the answers where he was talking about the coal tar asphalt sealant, where he did show his background, at least with some scientific or just understanding that aspect of it. Just shown through. So just very impressed with Mr. Lichterman.
Thank you. I think most everybody said what I have down here. Just to reiterate one thing that maybe Member Cuesta said he has one city experience, but 9 years of real depth in that. So he's been involved in almost every single level, it seems. So he has an understanding of a full city kind of operation. I liked his open style too, and he was involved in 3 high-density housing developments and challenges from that in an area that maybe is not so accustomed to that, and articulated some things around change management. I think that the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned that I found fascinating. I want to check out that book as well. All right, so there we have sort of our sense of what we're thinking about the assets of each of these. Are you able to tell us each who you think your candidate is that you think might be the best match of assets to the place that we are as a city and the needs that we have and the opportunities we have for Englewood?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Who wants to kick us off? Go ahead, Member Cuesta.
I'm happy to start. I would again thank Ms. Voorhees, who led us through this process and really brought through a great amount of candidates. Our top 3 are great, and it went beyond that. It was a deep bench here, and so I'm grateful for that. Any one of these, I think, would be a terrific job for Englewood and probably many cities out there. I imagine all 3 of these guys are going to be city managers sooner or later, probably sooner. For me, again, all 3 being great. This to me was first, second, and third on the Olympics. They were divided by a matter of hundreds of seconds, but it would be Mr. Lewis for me, was my lead candidate. But again, I thought all of them were extremely satisfactory and impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Cuesta, I love the way you talk about people.
Too kind, too kind.
I love the way you said that. I think it's really an amazing group, and yeah. Anybody else? Do you want to chime in? Do you want to go just get on the line? Councilmember
I
Barrington?
wouldn't want to be unfair.
No, go
Somebody else wants to, go ahead.
Go down the line, I think it's fine.
Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Barrington?
If somebody else would like to go ahead.
No one's put their light on. Councilmember
Neither did I.
Martinez?
Thank you. I, again, agree with Councilmember Cuesta. All of these candidates were fantastic, and they all had great experience. I think for us, in where our city is now and the needs of our city, I think Sean Lewis is the best candidate because his experience is so in tandem with what we have going on in our city right now. And so for me, that is the candidate that would be the best fit at this moment.
All right, Councilmember Wink?
Thanks, Mayor. I too thank Member Cuesta for that eloquent introduction to our decision or our naming of one individual, and thank the 3 candidates for their time and their energy and all that they put into the interview process, and wish everyone well, however this ends up. I do concur with Members Cuesta and Martinez. In that Mr. Lewis simply felt, his dossier felt that it was a natural fit, actually. It felt natural, given what the experience was, how long, in what context, what he learned from it, what he told us about it, how he presented himself with us, whether giving information, asking questions. The whole thing seemed like the best fit. So Mr. Lewis would be my person. Thank you.
Councilmember Sierra?
I agree that all 3 candidates were just very impressive. And when I went down and ranked each of the candidates, it was by the slimmest of margins. It was just really, really tight. I personally had Mr. Lichterman as my top choice. Just seeing, there were just a few things that really just, again, it was just really small, but I just thought that in terms of his temperament and maturity, I thought that was just one of the deciding factors for me. So I chose Mr. Lichterman as my top choice.
Thank you. Further? Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I actually do appreciate all three candidates, the hard work that they put in, and this was very close, and I believe that all three of them could have served our city very well. And so I'm very appreciative of that. With that being said, I do agree that that Mr. Lewis is probably the best fit for our city at this time and has a lot of experience in the areas that we're facing right now. And so I will be supporting Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. Member Barentine, do you want to go next, or do you want me to? It doesn't, I don't want to force you. Okay. I thought I would come in tonight saying we have 4 choices. We have 3 great candidates, or we could say the search has failed. But I don't think the search has failed because we have 3 great candidates, and I wish each one of them well. And my first choice was Mr. Lewis as well, matching many of the things that are going on with our city at this point. Councilmember Barentine.
I share Mr. C.R.'s and Councilmember Cuesta's respect for what this agency did. Heidi, you are to be commended. We had some amazing candidates, and I would have been happy with any of the 3. I think that it was, as Councilmember Cuesta said, a matter of seconds between any of the candidates, and I really actually had some very strong points and some concerns about each of the 3 of them, but I would have been happy with any of the 3, so that's kind of why I wanted to really hear what my fellow council members had to say. I think that Mr. Lichterman, to Councilmember C.R.'s point, would do an amazing job here. I think that he would, the kind of experience that he has, but I also think that there's a level of some, just that 1/10 of a second bit that does put Mr. Lewis a little ahead of that for this community. So I would be more than happy to support him.
Thank you. It looks like we have a majority to move Mr. Lewis forward as a city manager. Could I get a motion to that effect?
I move to approve Mr. Lewis as our next city manager.
Could I have a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show. 7 ayes.
Thank you. As the next step, yay! So we are going to an executive session for our next point here, and for discussion matters subject to the negotiation under C.R.S. Section 24-6-4024E, focusing upon matters related to development of these terms of contract with the future named city manager that will be subject to negotiation. So that's the agenda item, and I will read our first motion form. I, as mayor, move to go into executive session to discuss matters subject to negotiation under C.R.S. Section 24-6402-4E, focusing upon matters related to development of those terms of contract with future city manager that will be subject to negotiation, to include Mayor Linda Olson, Mayor Pro Tem Rita Russell, and council members Lorette Barentine, Dave Cuesta, Amy Martinez, Othaniel Sierra, Cheryl Wink, and City Attorney Allison McKitty Brown, and GovHR Director or President and Principal Heidi Voorhees. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. Oh, do you want further discussion? Yes, Councilmember Barentine.
I wasn't sure if the issues that have been brought up by the city manager that required this executive session, whether the email that we had earlier already negated the need for that, or whether there were other issues with the contract, because I thought there was just one particular issue, and we had an email earlier that took that off the table, so.
I'm unaware of the email, but there are about 7 or 8 terms of the contract that I need your input in before we give the contract to Ms. Voorhees for her to begin active negotiations with Mr. Lewis.
All right, then I misunderstood, and I appreciate the clarification that it was more than just that. Thank you.
Thank you for raising the question. Any others of that nature? All right, please vote to go into executive session.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show. 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Mayor, quick point of information, was Ms. Voorhees on the list of attendees? Thank you.
Yes, I just named her, yeah. Right, the time is now 9:30 and the executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were Mayor Linda Olson, Mayor Pro Tem Rita Russell, Council Members Othaniel Sierra, Laurette Barentine, Dave Cuesta, Amy Martinez, Cheryl Wink, City Attorney Allison McKinney Brown, and Heidi Voorhees from GovHR. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the executive session.
I move to close the executive session.
Could I have a second?
A second.
All right, any discussion? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show. 7 ayes.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you all. We have done an immense amount of work in the last 2 months to get this far, and it's been a great ending, I think. Looking forward to working together and further, and so this meeting is now adjourned.